Today on Locked On Canadiens, Lane Hutson got some Norris votes. We take a little bit of a look at that voting and think about what that means for his future. And then I have a Hear Me Out segment. I'm going to try and convince my co-host that the Canadiens need Brad Marchand.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode. We want to thank everyone for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. My name is Laura Saab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. Ian, are you ready for me to convince you that the Montreal Canadiens need Brad Marchand?
Yes, I can't wait to hear the case for it because player's great. Makes me feel a little icky though, Laura. I think that's one thing we can't understate in all of this. He can wear different jerseys. He might just be a Bruin forever.
I think so. But we'll see if there's a case for it. But first, we have to talk about our wonderful Lane Hutson. And then later on in the episode, we're going to do our David Savard season review. Not because we have to, but because we would like to, have a farewell ode to him. But first, let's get into Lane Hutson. So, Ian, yesterday, Lane Hutson was announced as the Calder winner. We had our reaction to it. You mentioned that you saw that potentially he might get a couple of fifth place votes for the Norris Trophy today. It was announced, and Lane Hutson came ninth in the Norris voting.
Yeah, I said that I thought it was a pretty optimistic look at what could happen with the Norris voting. And I said maybe a couple fifth place votes that a guy, that writers kind of throw out there just to be like, I really liked his season. It's worth throwing in there. I did not expect the amount of support that Lane Hutson got. He got 42 votes overall. So the way is it's ranked choice voting. So fifth place is 1 point all the way through first place, which I believe is 10 points. 42 votes, meaning he got 22 fifth place votes, 5 fourth place votes, and a third place vote. In somebody's mind, he was a finalist for the Norris this year. We talked yesterday about how this is in his future, right? We're headed in this direction where he's going to be a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. Just the offensive output is going to be at a point where you can sort of just see him being in that conversation all the time. Did not expect it this year, to be honest with you. Maybe it should have been a little bit of a giveaway how much of a runaway the Calder voting was. But even armed with that information, I still thought maybe he'll get one vote. He ended up getting 28 votes. Like, that's pretty impressive.
More than some other players that we could mention down the 40. I know there's a point to be made in a second. There was one person who gave him a third place vote, and that person wasn't even in the Canadian media. It was a Swedish reporter. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things too is that when you look at the actual Norris Trophy winner and how he won by an absolute landslide, and that is Cale Makar over Zach Werenski, who that was a respectable showing for Zach Werenski.
Sure.
But Cale Makar, it was like blew everybody out of the water. That is the direction the NHL is going in. If you want to be a winning team, you need to have Cale Makar-like players, right? We're going to have this conversation again about Quinn Hughes. We're going to have these types of conversations in the next few years. And it's interesting in that I know size is always it's always a knock on these kinds of players, but they're managing to anchor teams without having to have that size. Again, like when there is a large player who has these abilities, that is preferable. But by and large, like a lot of the players that play this way, they're smaller, they're much more slight. And so I feel like the direction the defense is going in as a whole, we talked a lot about this, over the course of the years of this podcast, is that you used to have multiple shutdown defensemen and that was your defense. You don't win like that anymore. You need to have these mobile, puck winning, play driving, creative, this kind of player that is the spark for your team. Like it starts from that guy, right? So yeah. I think and we have had conversations, not on this podcast. I mean, in general, as a society, we have had conversations putting Lane Hutson in that same mold, right? Like, the next Cale Makar. That's not saying it's a guarantee that he's going to do that, right? And that's also not saying that it's a guarantee that he's going to win a Stanley Cup just like Cale Makar did. But the fact that he's like, that's the player he's getting compared to, and that's the player that he has, he has the opportunity to emulate, I think to me says a whole lot about the talent the Montreal Canadiens have in Lane Hutson.
Yeah, I see the Makar comparison in the numbers, like just the pure stats. I don't necessarily see one in like how they accumulate those stats. Cale Makar uses his legs a lot. He's an effortless skater. Like it looks like the ice is just moving beneath him. I really just, it's a shame he's out west, and we don't get to watch him all that much because we got to go to bed at a decent hour. But like I love watching Cale Makar play hockey. I will say this: if I had a vote, which I don't. And also, I don't think media should. I want to stick to that premise that I launched a while ago on this show. If I had a vote, I'm giving it to Zach Werenski. And the reason I'm giving it to Zach Werenski is he averaged almost 27 minutes a night. He played in all situations for Columbus. We watched a lot of Blue Jackets hockey down the stretch as we were, watching to see if the Canadiens were going to completely fall out of that playoff spot. And the Jackets would have gotten it had Montreal not won game 82. But watching Zach Werenski, it's almost like he never leaves the ice. Like I find that he's going to win one before his career's over. And I think the Jackets are a better team for that. Now, I know there was a bit of a kerfuffle sometimes. There always is around these awards that players are sort of local vote merchants in that they only get the vote from their local market, and that buoys them into getting, whatever. Out of Lane Hutson's 28 votes that he got, 3 of them were from Montreal media. There wasn't a lot. I will say that I kind of find it more alarming that if you're in this conversation for this trophy or any of these trophies and your local media doesn't think you were worthy of it, they saw you 82 times. Don't have it. Like, I'm not saying that like local media should fully carry water for these guys, but the fact that like some folks didn't get local votes, it kind of is like, did these other people catch good nights with him? Are they just looking at the numbers and they're not watching the games? Like, and this all feeds back to the idea that I don't think writers should be voting on this. I just generally disagree with the practice. I've come to terms with the fact that that's never going to change, and that's fine. But I will be angry about it every time we have to have this conversation.
Were you thinking of a particular player who didn't get any local votes?
Well, it was a Senators fan on Reddit who was like, yeah, Lane Hutson just farmed the local votes. He got downvoted to oblivion. So good job, Reddit. You nailed that one. But Jake Sanderson, for example, did not get any local votes in Ottawa, which I find to be kind of strange. That, he got, I think, 15 total votes, and none of them came from the guys who watched him play 82 times. I find that to be a little odd, especially a player who was in the national spotlight, the international spotlight during the Four Nations, and he had a great Four Nations tournament, and he's a great player. But I found it odd that like he didn't get any local votes. Like I find that the conversation around this is always so, he got the cheap local votes, it doesn't matter. No, those guys watch this guy every single game. It should matter more. They have a larger sample size of who they're voting for.
Absolutely. And I just want to circle back real quick on Zach Werenski. I think that it's not that he's undeserving in any way. I do think, though, that a lot of times, like, performance of the team really does inform this, right? Because for all, like if you look at it objectively, Columbus went from the basement, like pretty much the Montreal trajectory, right? Like the basement at the beginning of the season, then something happened that flipped a switch, and it can actually be traced to the day that Patrick Laine said some things that they weren't very happy with, right? That lit a fire under their butts that they couldn't get going earlier. And then, they had multiple things to play for. But I do think that Cale Makar has a luxury on being on a team that is every year
Absolutely
a Stanley Cup contender, right? Columbus is unfortunately an afterthought. So part of these guys winning these championships, especially when you're saying like it's a flawed system where the writers vote and there's like not a whole lot of objectivity there, or not enough objectivity there. I do think that Montreal, like if Lane Hutson is to win, Montreal has to be making the headlines.
Yeah, for sure. Can I really quick before we head to our first break, I want to talk about the fact that so Lane Hutson, is his vote total was the most for Norris for a Montreal Canadiens since Shea Weber in 16-17. Weber got 100 votes. He was not, however, Weber was not the last Montreal Canadien to receive a Norris vote. That's our trivia question for today. I will reiterate it later on, but continue to ponder on that as we get going. It is Norris themed, so we'll leave you with that tease, but hang in there till the end of the episode where I'll go through our trivia question.
Now my brain is going to keep churning and trying to figure out who that is while we talk. All right, next up is we're going to just turn it into a segment because I keep trying to convince people of things. It's going to be called Hear Me Out. So today's segment is Hear Me Out, Brad Marchand. Should the Montreal Canadiens try to pursue him? And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, if I'm on a road trip, or I just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. The no-shells are so perfect for grab-and-go, but sometimes you just want to stack those little shells. It's really fun, especially if you're taking a break at work, and you're also getting a little protein boost at the same time. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is a snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, welcome to our new Hear Me Out segment. I think this is the segment that I need to get the propeller hat for. We were talking about assessing wild out there proposals, and I need I need this for the Hear Me Out.
Either that or a tinfoil hat.
A tinfoil hat. That would be fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this. Brad Marchand. Should the Montreal Canadiens pursue Brad Marchand?
Let me get this out of my system first. Ew, I don't want that at all. Just I'm taking the factual statistical part out of my brain and going full. My body has a visceral reaction to seeing that man in that jersey. It just does. It always will. It would be like if Zdeno Chara was a Montreal Canadien, or if Chris Kreider, who's getting traded to the Ducks, it was a Montreal Canadien. There's some people that are persona non grata and they're not allowed to be Montreal Canadiens. However, I am a slave to reason. So I will buy a reason that makes sense to me. So I'll throw it back to you. What is it about this player that should make me ignore the fight or flight my brain is putting me through when I hear Brad Marchand, the Montreal Canadien?
I think the best way I can describe Brad Marchand is the word effective, right? And part of it is that ill component, right? A lot of people consider Brendan Gallagher to be Brad Marchand with better PR, right? He's Brad Marchand, but not a Bruin. Now, I would say that Brad Marchand has a little bit more in terms of the point totals, in terms of the playoff performance. He has played a lot of playoff games. I believe 177 at the time of this recording. Let me just double check my
You got it right on the button.
And he's got 156 points in those playoff games, right?
Yeah.
This man is a playoff performer. And you can just look at the Florida Panthers series and just how much press he's getting for just being annoying and being in people's faces and being really a legitimately intelligent addition to the Florida Panthers team. I feel like he's very effective. And if the Montreal, and he's not got a whole lot of years of his career left, so we only have to hold our noses for 2-3 years tops, I think. But I feel like he's the kind of player that everyone wants on their team and nobody wants to play against, right?
Yeah.
He's also a team guy. As much as we think he's disgusting, he is very much a team and vibes guy in his own locker room. That's definitely part of it. He's the kind of person, and I know he was a Bruin for a very long time. But he's the kind of person like you just see it in Florida too. Like he will show up and he will try to integrate. He'll try to be part of the solution. He tries to be part of the process, and I really like that. Now, there's a lot of we have to hold our noses a lot. Like there's a lot about him that we have to do, right? Like we are going to contend with some unsavory headlines, and if you just think about the Montreal media and the Montreal fan base, and the next time he does something disgusting, like bite someone or lick someone's face, or like ew is a great way to describe this man.
Yeah, I'm glad you said hold your nose, because when I think of Brad Marchand, what you said about when he's on your team, you love him. When he's not, you hate him. Brad Marchand is a fart in a crowded car. Like the person who did it, it doesn't really bother them all that much. They kind of getting a kick out of how much it's bothering everybody else. But to everybody else, it's insufferable, and everyone's mad at you for doing the thing you did. Like yes. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around getting that kind of player. It's the same thing with Sam Bennett, right? Like I know a lot of Canadiens fans want Sam Bennett. No player has raised their stock more in the playoffs than Sam Bennett, who just cannot stop scoring goals and also laying people out. With Brad Marchand, though, he's 37. He just turned 37 in May, but he's 37. He's probably going to be looking for like a 4-year deal to take him to the end of his career, and probably not play particularly well, if at all, in that 41-year-old season. Like, is that something that you're willing to do if you're the Montreal Canadiens?
No, I think the Montreal Canadiens will want him at 2-3 at most. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that he clearly has a lot of hockey left in him. This isn't, he's not talking about this as like one last ride or anything like that. It is possible he does go, the route of some players where they do like a 1-year deal at a cup contender, and then another 1-year deal. And then you kind of have to like face the music at that point. I think that one other thing that he brings, other than that, extensive veteran playoff experience, is that he makes this team a little bit less likable. And the point I'm making is that,
from whose perspective? Like
opponents.
I don't really care what they think. Like now I'm kind of on Brad's side. If we're less likable to Ottawa or Toronto, sweet. Love that.
Yeah, there you go. Right. That's what we want. Because I do think that part of the perception that the Montreal Canadiens can get pushed around isn't necessarily just their height, which again, that's like there are smaller teams than the Canadiens out there. It's also not just about their youth. Yes, they are very young. It's also because they're just a likable bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Right. And there's something very wholesome about them. Like we talked about the reaction to Lane Hutson winning the Calder and all his teammates and all of that. We talked about how immaculate they are. We talked about the power of friendship. Like I feel like we need a little bit of frenemy in there, right? Like we didn't see enough of the things we love about Arbor Xhekaj, especially towards the end. Like he was not allowed to play and get in people's faces. Like Brad Marchand is not being sat. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, no, he would play a valuable role on whatever team he's headed to next. I do kind of like the idea that the Canadiens need another heel.
Yeah.
That they have a lot of baby faces. They have a lot of guys who are, the power of friendship is the perfect way to put it. It was a marquee thing for that group of guys to do that. We got to see it in person in Buffalo, and then we actually did it with the Roberts brothers, which was fun.
Hey, Roberts brothers.
Yeah, hi, Roberts brothers mentioned. But like I think that's going to matter at some point. And if somebody on this team cannot become that agitator, that heel, they're going to need to find it. And maybe Brad Marchand is that guy. Can I tell you the list of Montreal Canadiens to have worn the number 63? Just thinking about Brad putting on that number, putting on that sweater.
One more point I want to make, and then we can do that.
Sure.
Really quickly, is that like Brendan Gallagher is no longer that guy. Brendan Gallagher is softened. He's a dad now, right? So we need what really made people angry about Brendan Gallagher 10 years ago. That's what we need. Brad Marchand never
Brad
lost.
Marchand a dad?
He's a dad, but he doesn't have dad energy.
Yeah, that's true.
He has villain energy. That's it.
Yeah, when we did Gallagher's season review, my word was evolution, right? Yeah. It was because he's evolved into a different guy. He's not that agitator anymore, and he never was to the level that Brad Marchand is. Like he's elite at it. Yes. Speaking of elite, he would be probably the only elite player in Canadiens history to wear the number 63. Last was Evgeny Dodonov back in 2023. Before him, Matthew Pekka. Andres Enqvist and Craig Darby. Those are your number 63s in Montreal Canadiens history. So Marchand would step in and immediately be the best one. And we would all hold our noses and hope that he goes on another cup run with this team. And honestly, that would probably make Boston fans really mad. So that's an added bonus because like they're going to cheer for that guy, but that makes me kind of feel sick to do that. So nobody's happy in this.
All right, listeners, you tell us what you think. I'm not necessarily saying the Canadiens should go after him. I'm just doing hear me out. I've made my points, and then we can all decide as a group collectively whether or not Brad Marchand should be pursued by the Montreal Canadiens. All right, real quick, up next, we have our ode to David Savard, who we will miss his season review / farewell coming up in just a moment. All right. Speaking of dads and dad energy, let's talk about David Savard. He made no secret of the fact that this was his last season towards the end of the year. He talked about this playoff run meaning so much to him and the guys kind of playing for him. They talked about it. They talked about, we're going to play this one last one for David Savard. We're going to do our best. It didn't go the way that everyone expected it to. But overall, I think that we can talk about his season and maybe find some positives in it, right? I think, objectively speaking, this was not his best season in an NHL uniform, right? His age really caught up with him. Yep. There were a lot of moments where he was slow. There were a lot of moments where you were like, oh, David Savard behind the play again. But there were some really, really, really endearing moments on the ice, I found. Not least is when he would lie on the puck and just like not let anyone touch it for a whole minute.
That was my favorite thing Savard did. And I mean, the other one was the random spinorama he would pull out of nowhere. He didn't do it much this year because I just don't think the legs had it in him anymore. But like in the previous years, he'd be on the blue line and just decide, I'm going to do a Savardian spinorama, but just different Savard. And a lot of times he created something out of it. It wasn't just for no reason. I don't know if I have a word necessarily to describe the season of David Savard, but I guess I'll say satisfied. I think he's very satisfied with his career. He has a cup. He got to wear the Canadiens jersey in his career. He got to wear it in the playoffs in his career, which I know meant a great deal to him. I know it means a lot that he was raising his kids in Montreal. You talk about free agents wanting to come to Montreal. That's something you can't really put a price on, right? Is wanting your family to be raised in a certain area. And that's why he chose Montreal. And it was very obvious, like the second the Stanley Cup final ended, they're like, by the way, Savard's going to Montreal. Like there was no second option there. Do you have a word for the season that David Savard had?
Honestly, I think for me, it was more to describe David Savard more than the season. And it was just dad. Like he was the team dad. And I think when the first round playoff series ended, he couldn't contain his tears, right? They were right out there, like he couldn't hold back. And I think what the emotion that comes with, right? Like I feel like he's somebody who in this kind of sport, like seeing that was so refreshing and so touching is just like, my emotions got the better of me. Like I think he really loves this team a lot too. I don't think it was just necessarily just the part about being in Montreal. That's probably why he came. But then like being part of this group and fostering them and being a mentor to them and really just being that guy in the room for them, I think really, really meant a lot to him. I don't know, we never discussed it on the show, but I don't know if you caught it, Ian, like the when the Canadiens charter landed back in Montreal after that playoff series, there was a fire truck salute, the way they do for pilots and so I thought that was like it's incredible to me that's how much he meant to the city, right? Like whatever he got out of it, he gave back. I think and for me, like that's the season review for me is just feelings. It's less on ice stuff, it's just feelings.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what Savard ended up being, was just a vibes guy, right? Like the vibes are what we were going to remember. And that's what he brought. I mean, other than just his willingness to completely throw himself into harm's way for this team. Like that's a guy who will run through a wall for that crest, a guy who will bleed for that crest. I think back to that sequence in Buffalo, was it last year or the year before, where he laid out to block a shot. It took the steal out of his skate, and he blocked a whole bunch more on the same shift on the same play. Ended up breaking his wrist. That's the David Savard that I will remember, and the one that used to just sit on the puck in the corner to end a game. I will see this forever in my mind against that one of those last games against Tampa Bay, where he knows there's no time left on the clock. He knows I can pretty much get away with anything right now. I'm going to sit on the puck and I'm going to grab Nikita Kucherov's stick and we're just going to win the game. That's the sort of thing that, like, when Savvy is his nickname, but that's what savvy vets do, right? Yeah. Like they know what they can and can't get away with. And he knew he could get away with that. I usually bring the numbers to this show, Laura. The number I have, the one big number I have for David Savard is 2. More specifically, second. The Montreal Canadiens this year were second in the National Hockey League in block shots at 1,424, only behind the Philadelphia Flyers. And David Savard was a big part of that. He led the team in blocks with 180. He kind of set the tone for, this is how we are going to win games. You're going to have to throw yourself in front of that thing, and it's going to hurt sometimes. But, the cheer you get from the home crowd is going to be great. The pat on the back you get on the bench is going to be worth it. And eventually, when you're doing those things and winning a Stanley Cup, it probably hurts a little bit less, right? Yeah. Like, I think that he exemplifies somebody who will do all of the dumb, dirty things that you need to have done to win a Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be room for guys like that on Stanley Cup caliber rosters.
Absolutely. And here's my question then. Who becomes the vibes guy and who replaces him in block shots?
So second in block shots was Mike Matheson. Ideally, Mike Matheson isn't blocking that many shots. I think a full season of Alex Carrier, maybe we're seeing him take over that. Team dad, though, is probably Gallagher or Matheson. They probably share the role a little bit now. But it was Savard.
Because everyone else is 12 years old.
Right, exactly. Like, remember their Halloween party where I think it was just Savard and Matheson. They dressed up as old guys, like grandpas. Like, that's probably how they feel, around, 20-year-old Lane Hutson doing Lane Hutson things. I think that it's going to be tough to replace him from a vibes perspective. And that's difficult for the front office to do, right? It's difficult for them to look around and say, this guy would mesh really well with our guys. They don't really know that until it happens. So it's on the guys that are currently there to fill that void a little bit. So who's ready to step into a role like that? I think Caden Gooley's ripe for that sort of thing, becoming that shot blocking menace who, will do anything that it takes to win. And he's also really funny. Caden Gooley is like underratedly funny. I would like to see him sort of not necessarily take the role that Savard had in play style so much, but in influence on that locker room, because he's kind of a veteran at this point. No, Caden Gooley, like, it's kind of weird.
He's a veteran.
He's going into season 5, season 6. Like, he's been around a minute.
Yeah. And I think he's going into season 5, if I'm not mistaken. Because he was not on that 2021 Stanley Cup playoff roster.
No, he started the following season. He was one of the only good things that happened.
Oh, yes, I remember in that really terrible season. There we go. So we're getting old too. Like, I'm David Savard. I need to be put out to pasture. I can't remember things. All right, I think it's time for our trivia, so we can get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it. So yesterday's question was draft class based. The 2007 Canadiens draft class is regarded as one of the best in recent memory. Ryan McDonough, Max Pacioretty, and PK Subban were the Habs' first 3 picks. I know some people thought that the answer to this question was Yannick Weber because he went next. I asked about the following draft class, the 2008. How many players selected by Montreal in 2008 played NHL games? Laura, do you have the answer for this?
Yes, I did. I guessed it kind of in jest, and it turned out to be true. The answer is 0.
It is 0. They got nothing out of those guys. Danny Kristo, Steve Qualier, Jason Misayan, Maxim Trunev, and Patrick Johnson. 0 games out of all of them. The answer was correct from Super Rain, David Waddy, Marc Couturier, Jeff Harpel, and Michel Boivin, who wrote in and also said 0, barf. Anyway, this sent me down a rabbit hole of reviewing the Canadiens' putrid draft record for most of the last 2 decades, hopefully which is reversed now. It got me thinking, who was the last Canadiens drafted player who got named to an all-star game with the Habs? I think it's Subban in 2015-16. Yikes. That's an indictment in and of itself. That's the last guy they drafted. The last guy they drafted who made an all-star team was drafted in 2007. That has to change. So thank you for getting everyone getting that question right. And thank you to Michelle for writing in and giving us a little more of a factoid there. Appreciate that. All right. Today's question, we teased it before. It's based on the Norris. Before Lane Hutson, who was the last Montreal Canadien to receive any votes for the Norris? If you have that answer, put it in the comments down below. Email it to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We'll shout you out on the next episode of the show and let everyone know how smart you are.
All right, you heard the man. It is the end of our show, but that doesn't mean we're not coming back tomorrow. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube 5 days a week. Every weekday, you get Montreal Canadiens content. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, also whatever your podcast app of choice is. You can also find us all over social media. We are on TikTok at Locked On Canadiens. We are on Blue Sky at Locked On Canadiens. We're on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. And we're at Gmail at Locked On Canadiens. And tomorrow is our mailbag episode. So please send us questions. We would love to tackle them on tomorrow's episode. And pretty soon we're going to have a goalie review and a Caden Gooley review. That's coming up with some special guests. But the draft is creeping up on us, so we've got stuff about that as well. You'll find my co-host on social media at Maybe Ian. You'll find me at The Active Stick. We want to thank everyone so much for listening. And we will talk to you all tomorrow.